Hello and welcome to this video. If you've read the title, then you know that I'm going to be talking about the Hasselblad 500 series. This particular one is the Hasselblad 500 CM, arguably the most popular model and one of the most basic. It's a fully mechanical camera, so it's all just clockwork. The changes between different models is very minor, so this will cover pretty much everything. Get straight out the bat, they're 6.6 cameras, medium format cameras. A lot of people will claim them to be sort of the holy grail of medium format cameras, which I think is a false statement, and I will explain that in a bit. But fully modular, so the back can be removed and the waste oil finder or prisms can be changed. Lens can obviously be changed, focusing screen can be changed. The whole thing is interchangeable, and it all just sort of clicks back together. This one I'm actually borrowing from work for demonstrative purposes. I've shot Hasselblads in the past, but it's not something I enjoy. I've never actually owned a Hasselblad, but I have definitely shot with them a few times. So they're Swedish made, designed in Sweden, and they were originally made in Sweden by Victor Hasselblad. Where else do you think you get the name from? If you own a Hasselblad, then one of the most important things to do to keep it running, as it is fully mechanical, is to use them, or if failing that, not have them sitting idle for long periods of time. The mechanisms will just seize up if you don't use them. So if you've got one and you're not using it, just every so often just go over, advance it, take a shot, advance it, take a shot, and that should just help keep everything running. The later models were they had more electronics built into them. They were still fully mechanical cameras, but they had things like TTL flash metering, and there was the Hasselblad 500 ELM, or was it the EL? There was the Hasselblad 500 EL, which had a motor drive essentially fixed to the bottom, which couldn't be taken off. You can't get the batteries for it, but you can get sort of replacements, so they're normally the cheapest. Hasselblads have also increased in price massively in the last, I want to say, sort of 5-6 years. I think that's just because they are fully mechanical cameras and they sit in kind of a similar league to a company such as Leica. The name will actually sort of garner a higher price than any other alternative, even though the alternatives may be just as good, if not better in some cases, but it depends what you're doing. For me, I've never got on with Hasselblads. I think they are too basic and they kind of limit you with what you can do with them. They're also a very expensive system. So yeah, a Hasselblad 500 CM with a lens and everything will be £1,000 if not more, and although the lenses are great, they're all Carl Zeiss lenses, they're not, I wouldn't say they're necessarily significantly better than something you could get, say, from the Bronica system or from Mamiya. So there are other options, and I think they're always going to be a lot cheaper. They're going to be more electronic, the other options, so the Bronicas are fully electronic and most of the Mamiyas are electronic as well, but you will be able to get sort of a full system of different lenses, prism finders, you name it, and it will be a lot cheaper than the Hasselblad. So as I said, the Hasselblad's very, very minimal on features. If I take the back off, then you can see, but what you've essentially got is wind the camera on, take a picture, wind it on. You've got small things like there's a mirror lockup just on the side here, and your shutter speed and aperture on the lens, which they're on a coupled system, so it's kind of designed to calculate them with what's called EV, so exposure value, and it's a similar thing that Rolly does. So Rolly does this as well, but you set your settings, so you would set, say, 2.8 60th of a second, and then if you move one ring, it will move both the rings. I don't know if you can see that. So basically 2.8 at 125th of a second is the same exposure value as f4 at 60th of a second, and you can basically move up or down shutter speeds or apertures without having to change exposure unless the lighting is changing, which that is a nice feature, but it can be a pain, especially with these older lenses. So this is a 80mm C T-Star, where there's a little metal switch here, and you have to pull that back in order to decouple the shutter speed from the aperture. Trust me, if it's cold, that's not fun to do. It hurts. The later versions of the lens, so I believe it's the CF and the CB, you press a button and turn it, which is just so much easier to do. So going back to the lens has a leaf shutter built into it. When you are using flash or strobes, then you can sync those strobes up to any shutter speed, and generally the maximum will be about 500th of a second. Leaf shutter lenses don't usually go above that speed, but it makes it much easier if you're doing studio work. Something else that's also very important to know if you're a Hasselblad owner or thinking of getting a Hasselblad, the lenses, oh my god, the lenses are nice, they're very sharp, but as with most medium format cameras where you have to have the lens cocked in order to remove the lens or to put the lens back on, with the Hasselblad lenses it's the same. So to remove the lens, there's a button on the side here, and then just rotate. You can trigger the lens separately from the body, or you can trigger the body separately from the lens, which is what others do. But then the Hasselblad cameras will let you mount them back together, and then when you try to advance the body, the lens is already cocked, it won't work. Or if the lens is uncocked and the body is cocked, you won't be able to fire, and you won't be able to reset the lens. So it is possible to unset them, but once you've put them back on the body, it's a nightmare. Like, it really is. You have to get a screwdriver in, take little bits out and go in from the back, and it's, yeah, don't do it. Please don't do it. I've seen people do it, and it's a nightmare. It's such a pain to do. Barn door system at the back. So this is literally just two flaps behind the mirror, which when the mirror goes up, these will open, and then the lens will open, and as long as your finger is on the shutter button, those won't close. So as soon as you remove your finger from the shutter button, they will close, which is why with Hasselblad you get this double click. So let's set this to a 60th, 30th of a second. So if you look through, the lens flicked, and then now while I've got my finger on the button, the back is open, then as soon as I take my finger off, it closes again. So it's kind of a prevention system so that you can't take the lens off and expose film, blah blah blah. But that's how you get that sort of classic Hasselblad sound. So the backs are pretty universal. So a Hasselblad back from the 50s will fit a Hasselblad from the 90s, and a 90s back will fit a Hasselblad from the 50s, pretty much. There are three main backs, which are the 120/6/6 backs, so like this square one. There's 220/6/6 backs, so double the length of film, and then you get 645 backs, which are masking the film down. So I think you get 15 or 16 shots instead of 12 6/6 120 or 24 with 6/6 220. Then you also have things like this is an A12 back. When you advance the camera, it will also advance the back. There was an earlier back called the M12, which was a mechanical manual wind back. So you had to advance the film separately. And there was a little window in the back so you could see the numbers on the backing paper of the film. And then there's the E12, which can communicate with the body to let sort of a metered prism or something know what the ISO is. But they're much more expensive. A back on its own will be sort of 100, 150 pounds. Another nice little hidden feature about the production of Hasselblads, the serial numbers on the body and the back. So the body one is here, and the one on the back is here. There are two letters preceding the number. So the two letters will correspond to their own numbers, which will tell you the year that they were produced. And the way that you do this is you use sort of like a code. So it's VH, Victor Hasselblad Pictures, where the V stands for 1, H stands for 2, P stands for 3, and so on. And then S at the end stands for 0. So it's 10 digits, and you can pretty much work out when they were produced, which is a nice way to do it. Going back to the body, obviously you've got your waist level finder, which you open by sliding this to the right, this little nub there, and then in order to get the little magnifier up, you push that to the right, and that pulls the magnifier up, and then to put that back down, you just push down. And then different styles of prism do it differently, but this one you push down one side, push down the other, push down the back, close, and click, and that's locked. So unlike, say, the Mamiya RZ or the RB, there's a helicoid in the lens which is used for focusing. That's the same as it is with the Bronica system. It's going to be very, very similar to something like the Bronica system, so the SQ system. Everything's modular, everything is pretty much where it should be. And the main difference is that the Hasselblads are fully mechanical and the Bronicas are fully electronic. That has its pros and cons. I've pretty much covered that in the Mamiya RB versus the RZ video, but basic run through. The electronic bodies will be cheaper to buy just because the age of electronics is sort of starting to become somewhat unreliable. The mechanical bodies will be therefore more expensive because they are more reliable, but that doesn't mean that they won't fail. If they fail, the mechanical bodies are easier to repair, but that initial cost could be sort of outweighed by the fact that you can buy a Bronica SQA, you could buy one 3, maybe 4 times for the price of a Hasselblad. And when you're considering that it's a modular system, all you would necessarily possibly need to buy would be one part. It becomes even cheaper still. So if this is your first time looking at 6.6 medium format cameras, I wouldn't recommend the Hasselblad unless you know you're going to be using it a lot and for a long time. The Bronica system is kind of just a workhorse. It will just keep going, and if you break it, then you break it, but it won't be as expensive to replace as one of the Hasselblads. The main argument people have for the Hasselblads being better than, say, the Bronicas is the quality of the lenses. But if I throw up 2 pictures now, one of them's a Bronica picture, one of them's a Hasselblad picture. Very hard to tell it's a 6.6 picture unless you know the characteristics of the Zeiss lenses. It makes no difference. The Bronica lenses are still phenomenal lenses. In case you were wondering, this one was the Bronica and this one was the Hasselblad. So yeah, it's a personal preference, but for most people, I would always suggest, especially if it's your first time getting into medium format, steer clear of the Hasselblad unless you know you're going to be using it religiously and for a very long time, because the other systems are easier to get into. If you're just getting into it and you want to keep sort of chopping and changing, then that's going to make it easier for you as well. And yeah, I think the Hasselblads, as with the Leicas, are very, very, you pay for the name and you pay for kind of the ideology of that brand, and it's not necessarily worth it. You can get just as good images with, say, a Bronica or a Mamiya or any other medium format system, and the Hasselblads aren't necessarily that much more special. And that's kind of always been my problem with Hasselblad. I think they are beautiful cameras, and I think they are very well made, and they just work. But I always, in the back of my mind, I've always got this thought process that you could have something significantly cheaper and be getting the same results, which, if you're just getting into medium format, will make a lot of difference, because it's going to be more accessible and it's going to be sort of generally more user friendly. The Hasselblad has its quirks, and for most people that use them, they will love them, but I would never recommend it as a starter camera. Just to recap, Hasselblad cameras, great cameras. I'm going to throw up some pictures now and you can have a look, see what you think of image quality. But yeah, fully mechanical, very little changed from, say, the early 500s all the way up to sort of the 503, CX, CW, all those different models. Not much changed, and that's quite nice. It's admirable that they did that. But yeah, I'm going to throw up some pictures now. You can have a look through them. These have all been taken with Hasselblads, as far as I'm aware. There will be different Hasselblads, and I will not be able to remember which one's which. But yeah, it's going to be 500s, 500Cs, CMs, 503s, all sorts. So hope you enjoy the pictures, and I'll be back in a second. So that's going to pretty much do it for the Hasselblad video, and yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, you can like and subscribe. Any questions, leave them in the comments and I will get back to those. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.